We can call the meeting to order at this time. Good evening, Exeter. Good evening to my colleagues on the board, respective town staff, other attendees this evening, those of you watching at home. As chair of the Exeter Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street on January 15th. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. We remind all of you of the usual rules of conduct and decorum continue to apply. All votes taken during this meeting tonight will be done via roll call vote, and I'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of the Select Board. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting and who that person is, which is required under the right to know law. Good evening, Selectman Darrell Brown.
I'm here. I'm alone.
Thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, good evening.
Hi, I'm here and alone.
Thank you. The clerk, Selectwoman Julie Gilman, good evening.
Good evening. I am in my room alone.
And the vice chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan, good evening.
Hey, everybody. I am here and alone.
Thank you. I am Nico Papakostendis, and I am also here alone in the room. With us this evening, we also have the town manager, Mr. Russ Dean. Good evening, Mr. Dean.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm in my office and by myself.
Okay, and I believe we have our recording secretary, Joanna Bartel, with us as well.
She's actually at a co-op meeting tonight. She does double duty, so
okay.
she'll be transcribing the minutes from this off the video.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Before we move on to public comment, we do have a very busy night. In addition to our discussion items, it's the public hearing for the budget, bonds, and warrant articles. But unfortunately, I have to start the meeting on a sad note to announce that Peg Duhamel passed away on Saturday. As we all know, Peg was a lifelong resident of Exeter, most recently residing at Riverwoods. Peg volunteered for the town for decades, serving in multiple areas, including the Exeter Historical District. She was a trustee of the trust. She was also a volunteer at the Exeter Housing Authority, but put in over 20 years as a supervisor of the checklist. So it's with sadness I announce her passing. Our sympathies and condolences go out to her children and her grandchildren and family and friends, and may her memory be eternal. Okay, thank you. We'll go into public comment right now. This is an opportunity for the public to come forward with comment. We do ask, though, if any of your comments are relative to discussion items on the agenda, that you wait until that topic comes up on the agenda. So I will pause and see if anybody raises their hand for public comment. Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comment. We do not have any proclamations or recognitions this evening, so at this point, I would look for a motion to approve the Exeter Select Board meeting minutes from the January 11th, 2021 meeting, unless there are any revisions or amendments.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And the clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We do not have any appointments this evening, so we can jump right into discussion action items. The first of which is a continuing discussion on the 2021 deliberative session. Just to summarize quickly, we have two options before us, having a deliberative session or HB 1129. We've had extensive conversation and deliberation. When we last left off a week ago Monday, Mr. Dean and Mr. Murray were given some questions by the board, some recommendations, and in fact took the week to do their homework. So I know that they have some information to come back to the board on. We have a memo from Mr. Murray that's in our packet indicating that he felt after touring the facility at the high school that the air quality was fine, as Mr. Lister indicated last week. What we also have in our packet is a draft letter to Governor Sununu that Mr. Dean was asked to write. And this was an option for consideration of the board, given that the deliberative session is not technically an election. The governor has issued an executive order back in March for all boards and committees to meet virtually. So this was a letter we asked Mr. Dean to draft. The board can discuss whether or not we want to actually send it. But essentially, it's requesting that Governor Sununu issue an executive order to allow towns to hold a virtual deliberative session if they so choose. So I'd like to open it up to the board for any discussion or questions or recommendations. And if there are none, then I would entertain a motion to authorize Mr. Dean to send the letter to Governor Sununu on behalf of the Select Board.
So moved.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I'm trying to go to the letter right now to make sure that it includes.
All right, let me second it for discussion.
Thank you, Selectwoman Gilman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're including information about the additional strain of COVID that's been, that we've tested and found in Massachusetts. I think that may have come up over the weekend. And then I wondered, and this, I want to discuss this before I actually make a motion to put it in the letter, but I know that we vote on things at the deliberative session, but it is not an election. Like these are not binding results for the town that, the outcome of the deliberative session is the outcome of the election. So is there some point to make here that says you let us vote on things in this body, by remote session? Why are we changing how we allow towns to operate for something that is different than an election? It's not an election. So I don't know why it wouldn't fall under the executive order that we already have, maybe, or, expanding that executive order to cover deliberative sessions. And I am curious, Walter, what do you think? I'm curious, maybe Vicky and Paul, and then the rest of the board.
Well, I haven't seen the draft letter, but I haven't run into any attorney who is dealing with these general issues who has yet thought the existing executive orders apply to this town meeting as it presently is ordered.
Okay, so it sounds like we would need an additional executive order.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Selectwoman Cowan, although we don't elect people at a deliberative session, there is the opportunity for the public to amend any warrant article that we put forward. And that requires a majority of the body present to amend a warrant article. So there is still some point that the voters have an opportunity to interact in a real deliberative session.
Yeah, I understand. I just want to have this the safest way we possibly can. And I truly cannot wrap my head around why we can't figure this out and do a remote session.
Any other questions or comments from the board? We have a motion from Selectman Brown and a second from Selectwoman Gilman to authorize Mr. Dean to send this letter to Governor Sununu. If there's no other discussion.
The only other discussion is, would it not make sense for Walter to read this before we do that?
We could send it to Walter.
I mean, it just seems like, we've got him here in all other parts of the discussion. Why not this?
I won't see it till tomorrow morning, but you're not going to mail it tonight anyway.
Right. So I just,
Mr. Chair, if I could, just for a second, sorry, Lovey, this is a technical issue. The Zoom is saying that it says host disabled participant screen sharing. I'm unable to share my screen, which I know is probably popular with some of you, but that I want to let Bob know because I can see him on the call, and maybe we can fix that because we'll definitely need it for later for sure.
Yeah, Natasha, if you just...
I already did it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Okay, it's fixed. Thank you very much.
So providing Attorney Mitchell doesn't have any objections tomorrow morning, is the board comfortable with authorizing Mr. Dean to send the letter? The motion and the second remain. Selectman Brown, are you comfortable with that?
I am.
Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes.
Okay.
Selectwoman Cowan, are you specifically requesting that we have that additional notation in there?
I just wanted to talk about it. I mean, if you all think that it's appropriate, then I would like to, I would like to add it. But I also think, if we have a chance of getting an executive order and putting pressure on the governor, because the legislature sure isn't doing anything about this, let's send it off as soon as possible.
Right. So I think adding in an extra line indicating that there's been even further information since the initial conversations began seems fair.
Yeah. Thank you.
We might also consider a line about SB2, the alternative that's been presented for this year, is being heard in the Election Law Committee on Friday, which is probably beyond the time that we need to make a decision on this. And so an executive decision by the governor would help.
I just do have a technical question for Mr. Dean. Do we know of any other towns that may be also sending such a letter to the governor where we could have more voices heard all at once? Or are we the outlier? Just wondering if you know any of that from your talks with other towns.
I actually don't have any updated information on that because I reported last week that a lot of the communities have sort of soldiered on with their deliberative sessions. We've talked about it quite a bit more, I think, than some others, but I don't have any new information. I'm sure there's been plenty of communication, but I'm not sure it's been as formal as ours.
I would also be curious about how many towns have adopted HB 1129 or whatever the number is to cut out the public essentially from participating in deliberative session. I don't want to belabor this point. I think we have a good letter. I think we have a good strategy here. But I am interested in, one, including participation, and two, doing it as safely as possible. The only one I'm aware of HB 1129 is Newmarket around us that is utilizing it. They do only have I believe it's a single budget article and a single school article. It's a very small warrant by comparison.
And our office represents approximately 50 New Hampshire communities, and I don't know of one who's utilizing 1129. There could be some that just haven't discussed it with us, but none of them have brought it to our attention.
Thank you. That's good to know. Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. If you could take the roll.
Can we restate if we're amending it at all?
Yeah, we can.
Are we amending it?
No, Selectman Brown, if you would like to amend it to include, first of all, adding what Selectwoman Cowan has requested, and also contingent on Attorney Mitchell okaying it tomorrow.
Yeah, I will revise the motion to submit the letter with Selectwoman Cowan's edits, and then the attorney's reviewing.
And I will amend my second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown,
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan,
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Mr. Dean, if you could briefly summarize for us your report relative to our questions, suggestions, and recommendations from last Monday. I think you and Mr. Murray did a walkthrough along with Mr. Scafidi. I think you're muted, Russ.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Thanks.
So on Friday, January 15th, I did attend a meeting at the high school with town and school officials. We talked about the venue. There are several officials there, including Mr. Murray. He was there. He could not be on the call tonight, but he was there on Friday and did take good notes, of course. And it was at that session that they talked about basically the spaces that would be in use for the session. And really what it broke down to was the main auditorium, the small gym by door B85 as a venue for non-masked attendees. And then there was also a conversation about supplemental outdoor options. And that was, if that was going to be utilized for a session, the technical support would be in the lot in front of the high school, which is known as the senior lot. The cafeteria was not considered needed as another space based upon the anticipated attendance and the capacity of the other two venues. And I know in your packet, there's a breakdown of actual numbers as far as what numbers can fit in each place. And then technical broadcast details were vetted, including the ability for the moderator to see people in the rooms being utilized, including outdoors if necessary. And then the moderators came out of the meeting to consult with other officials regarding issues of safety and security. So that was a synopsis of the meeting. The only other thing I'd add, and I know as we get into this, we'll talk about it, but as we know, the deliberative session is the moderator's meeting. So I know Paul's on the call. So I was an attendee and I listened to all the different issues at hand, and there were quite a few, but I would say it was a pretty productive meeting as far as much as it could be with the people involved.
So I'll open, Mr. Dean, either you or Paul, if you could, I think one of the things we wanted was to kind of visualize how this was going to be set up, starting with the supervisors of the checklist. Where would they be? Working out the numbers. I know you've done that in the spreadsheet that we have in our packet, but if either you or Paul could visualize for us, where's the board going to be? Where are the microphones going to be? How is the setup going to be for our citizens?
You want me to take this, Russ?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul. I'll defer to you.
What we're going to do is similar in scope with the mask, no mask like we did at the election. The front lobby door will be for masked individuals. Those that want to come without using a mask will go, like Mr. Dean said, to around to the left side, where it's building door 85, which when you come in that door, you will be close to the small gym. When you come in the main door, you'll take a left and go down the hallway to the auditorium. In that hallway, we are going to set up the supervisor of the checklist table. That way there, when people come in to register to vote, they will register before they go into the auditorium. It will also give us the opportunity when people come in through building door 85, we're going to have a table set up that they only can come in so far. And from that point, we'll have a couple of ballot clerks or whoever with the supervisor. I'll appoint an assistant moderator to be down there, and people will give their name like they did at the election. Someone will check them off on the alpha list and take it down to the supervisor's table, check them in there, get a green card or whatever we're going to be used for voting, go back and give it to the person. They will be then led into the small gym, which is actually bigger than the Talbot gym. So it's really not a small venue. So that's how we're going to check people in. We are going to have I think it's going to be 3 monitors in the auditorium, 2 up on the stage facing outward, 1 in the front of the stage facing the stage. So those of us who are up on the stage can see a monitor. We are not going to use the pull-down screen that we project everything on. That way there we'll have a deeper stage, and the board and myself and Mr. Dean, Mr. Mitchell, and others will also be able to space out up on the stage itself. Everybody that comes into the building will be given a written handout of what we're going to be discussing that day. So, that's how everybody can follow along, even though we were talking about having the warrant be able to be videoed and put on the screens at the school at both sides of the stage, so if people want to see it, they can see it. It'll be tougher to see from the back section of the auditorium, but it will be visible, but they'll have a handout that they can follow along. The auditorium itself holds 1,000 people. We should be able to get anywhere from 260 to 280 in there with social distancing without any big problem. The chairs have already been marked off with blue tape of where you can sit and where you can't sit. That'll give everybody, when they walk in, an opportunity to find a spot as far away as they want to be to the stage or as close as they want to be. The same thing will happen down in the small gym. We'll have chairs set up, and they will be socially distanced naturally, so people can sit in the gym and not worry. But if they're not wearing a mask, they're not worried anyway. There'll also be another 50-inch screen set up in the gym with a microphone and a camera. So if they want to speak to an article, they don't have to leave the little gym or the small gym. They can talk to the article from that position, because the feed from the camera that's in that location will be fed through the system. So those of us up on the stage can view it on a 50-inch screen that'll be in the front of the stage, and other people can view it on those side screens. So that'll give everybody the opportunity to visit what they want to on each one article and talk to without having to leave their location. The stage will have microphones set up on it. They're not, we thought they would be coming down from the ceiling. They're not. They are floor microphones. So they'll be placed in different spots on the stage. So if you had to speak, Mr. Chairman, you would go to an area where there is a microphone on the floor. You can stand far enough away from it. You'll be able to just talk like we're talking right now, not have to talk into a mic. You don't have to talk down. The microphone is sensitive enough to be able to pick you up. It'll be broadcast in both locations. I will have a separate microphone on my podium. There'll be also 3 or 4 microphones set around the auditorium for anybody that wants to talk. They can go to a microphone and talk. We'll also have people there that'll be wiping down the microphones. If somebody hand holds a mic, that'll be taken aside. Another one will be used in its place. It'll be sterilized as best as we can. In speaking with the high school and Mr. Lister, Mr. Kremen, and the others involved, when we asked how many microphones can we use, Steve said, how many you want? We'll give you as many as you need. We have plenty of room for as many microphones as we need. We don't think we'll need the cafeteria or the real gym, the big gym, because we just don't anticipate that many people coming to the deliberative session. It's usually 200 people at the max. We don't know, but that's what my anticipated amount of people, the voters that are going to show up that day. It'll keep the supervisors of the checklist safe out in the hallway. They'll be against the back wall so people can't be coming around from them at all different angles. We'll have the plastic shields set up on their table. So that'll give Vicky and John and the others an opportunity to be as far away as we possibly can to get everything done. The police department's going to be a big presence at the location. We're going to have 2 officers in the auditorium and at least 1 officer in the small gym, with possibly another officer roaming the hallway or parking lot or wherever we think we may need him. Chief Poulin was very cooperative. He said, tell me what you need and we'll do our best to get it all taken care of. The way we have it set up, those that come in without a mask, there is a bathroom, a men's room and a ladies' room at that end of the hallway, so they don't have to come down to go into the foyer. If they want to use the facilities, they have one right there. Those of us in the auditorium can go out to the foyer and take care of it in that way. I think, everybody was pretty cooperative about what was going on how this was all going to shake out, and everybody felt pretty comfortable when we left. We were there about an hour and 20 minutes with the SAU, and they're in the same belief that it can work out without too much of a problem. So I'm pretty confident that we can get this taken care of without too much of an issue. But if anybody has any questions.
I was going to say, Paul, if you could, that's a lot to digest. And I think the board members have some questions.
Sure.
There were two hands up. Selectwoman Rountree-Olaf, did you still have a question?
Not right now. I'll come back though if I have a question to follow up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Selectwoman Cowan?
I have a question. How are we dealing with people who don't want to come and be at an in-person event?
We're not going to give them an option. If they don't want to come, we talked about doing the outside option, sitting in their cars. It's a logistical nightmare. The SAU is going to try to do it. We don't see where they're going to have something set up outside. It is going to be January and February. It's not going to be conducive to having a microphone outside, waiting for someone to come up and talk, having a big screen set up somehow for the outside, having a PA system set up for the outside, having a supervisor of the checklist or an assistant moderator on the outside. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be a feasible way of handling it. And I know that some people don't want to come inside. They're going to have to make that decision right now. It's my thoughts. I'm still waiting to hear how you all feel about this. But we can always change our mind up until the time of the meeting. I am going to go to the SAU meeting on the 30th and see how it works and see how easy or how hard it is. So there's really not going to be an option if you don't want to come into the building, in my opinion, right now.
I am really disappointed to hear that. I feel like we are catering to people who want to not wear masks per the governor's order and per our own town order, instead of people who have pre-existing conditions and also want to participate in democracy. This feels like a huge, stunning slap in the face to people who care about safety. This feels like a slap in the face to members of the staff who have said that they are not comfortable participating in a public deliberative session with no other options. And I'm not comfortable and I won't support this.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. If the board is not in favor of this, we'll work around it.
Selectwoman Gilman?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I agree with Moderator Scafidi that the outdoor in the car drive-in thing is just too horrendous. It took the State House, and granted it was 400 people, a couple of months to figure it out, and it's just not going to work here. I have my feeling is that Selectwoman Cowan's concerns are really valid in that, I don't want to have a super spreader event here in town that, we vote to put in. My only concern about a virtual event is that we cut out we cut out the interaction between voters. And so I'm still kind of torn about which way to go, but I'm leaning towards the virtual solution.
By virtual, what do you mean, Ms. Gilman?
What's in 1129 with the optional to have the selectmen have two meetings. The first one, we present everything and the public can send us emails or suggestions about what they really want to say at a deliberative session. And then the second meeting is when we respond to them and cast our votes for what goes on the warrant.
Okay, what happens if when they go to vote on the first article, they vote down that they didn't want to do this? What happens then?
Well, that's a good question, because then we're stuck with last year's budget. That's the biggest concern there.
Okay.
If there are no other board members who want to talk, I have another question. I know that Riverwoods, for example, if you leave the premise, you have to quarantine. Does that mean, I know we're worried about facing lawsuits from people, but does that mean that Riverwoods would have a suit because we've disenfranchised them?
How am I going to know that? I don't know that. They might not. I don't know.
So why then is this a risk that we're taking instead of an online deliberative session, which is safe?
Well, isn't that also taking people? You can fight it the opposite way, that I want to be there to discuss things. Aren't you sending those people away just like you are the people that are afraid to come into the building?
Well, and I really, really object to us sitting behind our screens. I personally voted against having events in this town, and then all of a sudden I'm going to support a super spreader internal inside event that we're saying, in order to participate in our democracy, you have to come inside a building, which granted, I'm sure that their ventilation system sounds safe. I appreciate all of the work that you've done. And my anger is not directed at one specific individual. It is directed at people and our society that is acting like we are not dealing with a deadly pandemic. And we are asking people to continue to live their lives and do the things that they do in order to participate in democracy and risk their lives. That is a fundamental thing that I am not comfortable with. I am not comfortable having town meetings, sitting safely in my house, in my bubble, and then saying to voters that they have to go to a town inside with a bunch of people who are not wearing masks. I am not comfortable with that, and I will not support it. And I think it is bad government.
Paul, you mentioned the SAU is doing an outside option, and you went into a little bit about what a logistical nightmare would be for us. But what's the SAU doing?
Same thing. They're going to set up a screen. They're going to set up microphones. They're going to have police presence. They're going to have people sitting in their cars. I believe Mr. Dean can tell me if I'm wrong, but they're going to have speakers set up, because I don't believe there's a way to do it over the radio. And if someone's going to have to go out, everybody that comes in a car is going to have to go out. Someone's going to have to get their information, go to the supervisor of the checklist. They're going to have to check them off, go back to the car. If somebody shows up at 10 minutes past 12, they're going to make sure, those are the things they're going to go ahead and try it, because they also have people that have issues with going into the building with other people, period, whether they're masked or non-masked. And it's not that I don't understand that. I understand that very well. If there was a better way and a simpler way or an easier way to make this happen, I'm all for it. I just want to know how we can make everybody happy, and I don't think we can. So we're going to have to make a decision, and I don't want this like last week, to go on for 2 hours back and forth about this, but we're going to have to make some type of decision. And nothing that I'm saying is cast in stone. If the consensus of the board is to do something different, that's fine. I can moderate anything you want me to moderate. I'm okay with it. I don't have any problem with it. The other thing you have to realize that we can't, and maybe Mr. Mitchell can tell me if I'm wrong, but we can't postpone or change our meeting without a consensus of the other 5 towns in the SAU, and making sure that they agree with it. I sent letters out to the other 5 town moderators, only got back 2, and the 2 I got back was, we're holding our town school board on this deliberative session on this night. We're going to the SAU deliberative session on the 30th, and we're voting March 9th. So 2 out of the 5 have already said that's what they're doing. And,
I'd like to hear Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf has her hand up. I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Apologies. I just had reached out that someone that I was close to just passed away, so I had to take a call quickly.
Sorry.
But the question I did want to ask is, have we reached out, and I'm sorry if I missed it, to the Riverwoods population? What's been the feedback from that community in regards to us having a live deliberative session? Because I know we discussed it briefly last time we spoke, and I wanted to know if there's been any feedback from them, since they do make up a large portion of the people who come out on during the deliberative sessions.
Mm-hmm. Before we go I will disagree with that. I'm not saying that people from Riverwood don't vote or don't want to. We don't see a large population of Riverwoods come to the deliberative session, at least not in my recollection of all the years that we've been doing this. I don't see that many Riverwoods people come in like they do vote.
I mean, I've seen the shuttle make many drop-offs and loops when I come out there, and I can certainly attest that there are far more citizens of the Exeter community who are not specifically in my age bracket, but above that, not making any overt generalizations, but that's just from what I can view when I attend and have attended in the past. Perhaps I'm wrong.
And as a supervisor, Paul, yes, we do have a large number of those living in our silver communities.
That's fine. But what's a large number, Vicki? 100?
Well, it makes up almost half of the attendees.
So just to point out, I wanted to mention too, since we met last week, that it was stated during the meeting on Friday that some people really needed to make the choice. And I know this is not going to sound good to quite a few people, but there was an acknowledgement sort of that some people may decide to sit this out just because of the nature of whether they have a condition or there was some issue. I think I just want to make sure I keep bringing us back to the fact that we know we can't have a virtual deliberative session. We do have 2 choices, the HB 1129 or the February 6th session. And the third piece of the outside piece, I just wanted to paint the picture of, as I understood it, and Paul, you can correct me, that there would be a microphone outside and that people would be able to walk up to that microphone and be seen inside the auditorium. That was one of the logical issues that we wrestled with, was making sure from a technical perspective, people could be seen from what we call the non-mask gym, and people could be seen from the auditorium, and people could also be seen that wanted to comment outside. And once we got to that level of logistics, it really got beyond, it started getting really beyond what we were capable of being able to provide. And I think everybody agreed with that on both the school and the town side, from what I could tell. Paul, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but that was what I got.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Once we started talking that way, it got a little bit more complicated.
And we have 18 to 20 articles versus the SAU 16 has one. And not that their meeting will go super fast, but really they're planning for one article, whereas we're planning for several. So the vote counting, the tallying, the checking, things like that also come into play. I'm not saying they supersede everything, but just that they do come into play as far as planning the event.
But I think that actually kind of goes along with Selectwoman Cowan's point. If you're going to have a briefer meeting, there are folks that, when folks that showed up to vote, knew that they may have to wait in line for a half hour, 40 minutes to vote. If you're talking about a meeting with one warrant article that you might be there for, a half hour, an hour, people might be willing to take that chance as opposed to, our session being 6 or 7 hours. And I think that goes back to what Selectwoman Cowan said. Selectwoman Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question or a scenario for Ms. Nevoychek as supervisor of the checklist. If we did this as a remote meeting with people sending us their written questions or responses to whatever we say, can that be used should we make a form, a Google form or something that requires a name and address so that then while we're getting the messages, putting a more burden on the supervisors of the checklist, you can verify that they are registered voters?
Yes, I would agree that if we go to that model, yes, I would definitely utilize technology in Google Form where we can capture all the data, phone number, email, all of that information along with how they want to restructure whatever warrant that they're looking to amend. I know we can't do a Zoom meeting like this where we let the public in because we could have a waiting room for all the voting public to sit. And we as checklist supervisors, and we can get other people from the town clerk's office to help us check in voters through that process. I want to thank Selectwoman Cowan for stepping up and saying what you said. I too have concerns. I'm the last man standing in my family that's healthy, and I supply a lot of support for them. So this is not a place I want to be, but because I'm an elected official, I will be there and do my duty. So yes, we can, Julie. It's just a little bit more work. And I would need to pull in some other resources, but we can certainly do so.
All right, that's was my question, is if there's a way to verify, because at an in-person meeting, someone may come up to speak to something that will affect them in some way, but if they're not from Exeter, we have to give approval, by a majority that they can speak.
That's correct.
Right. So I just wanted to be clear that we will have a method for that verification.
Selectwoman Cowan.
I also would like to check in on a request that I had last week, which was to see about the possibility of people attending in their cars, listening, and coming in to vote. Where did we land on that?
I was not aware, and Paul, again, you can correct me, but I was not aware that there would be able to be listening inside a car.
There will not be. They don't have any way to broadcast it via radio. The only thing that they said that might be able to happen if everybody brought a tablet with them and they could Zoom it, but that wasn't even sure that would handle everything that we needed to handle. The only way that when we left that ended it was that there would be speakers set up outside that people have to keep their cars rolled down and listen to it via speakers. And the further away you get, naturally, the less you're going to hear. And if you wanted to talk on the article, you would get out of your car, go to the microphone, talk into the microphone, which would be broadcast again to all the locations. And I would discuss it with you. We have to make sure everything is safe. I find out people that want to and don't want to talk, and someone wants to make an amendment. They're going to have to give the amendment to one of the ballot clerks or the assistant moderator or whoever outside. They will have to bring it into me. Naturally, I'd have to go ahead and do it. So nothing was working. People, if you wanted to do everything outside, it was going to be more difficult. Just for the way you would have to have speakers set up all over the place, cameras, et cetera, et cetera.
Bob, do you have anything to add to Selectwoman Cowan's question? Bob Plawacki?
Just that the school doesn't have the FM transmitter, but we do. And I believe it was made available to them if they wanted it. They didn't want to use it because they had believe there'd be some delay in the audio, which I don't know why that would be the case. So, I mean, it could be. We haven't fully tested how far it goes, but I think it would cover the entire front parking lot for sure. It just can't go like across the building because the building would block it. So if you did a setup similar to the movie nights, you can't do the screen in the daytime, obviously, because it's too bright, but there were speakers and the FM transmitter, and there wasn't like a delay between the speakers and the FM transmitter, so you can listen both ways.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I think that may work as far as the delay goes in a relatively small group. But in the large group that was at UNH with the legislators, there was a delay. And so people were hearing the speakers and hearing their radio. And when the votes came up, the 30-second rule got, pushed out and votes took 15 minutes instead. Mm-hmm. So it, really does depend on how far you have to cast that sound.
But that was for 400 plus people, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if we, typically, let's just go back the last 5 years. I mean, we normally wouldn't get more than 200 people total, sadly, at the entire session. So, we can maybe assume that some people will go in to the building. So are we talking about a smaller number? And Bob, if we're talking about a smaller number, would that be less logistically nightmarish than what Selectwoman Gilman described?
I can't speak to the logistics of the matter because we wouldn't be managing any of the people checking in or anything like that.
No, but I meant in terms of the technology.
I think at the movie nights, they kind of filled that back parking lot at the height of it, which I want to say was maybe 50 cars, but I'd have to check with Greg or Melissa on that. I don't know exactly how many cars they had in there, but the other option, if you just didn't have any speakers and you just required people, because I would assume every car has a radio. You'd hope so. That would be the option. The thing that's connecting all of the different venues is Zoom. So, there's the option of having, you could have it open to the public like this is, and just you aren't going to let them talk or anything. They could be listening on that if they wanted to from their cars or from wherever if you wanted to. I don't know if that's something you would want to do. They just sit there and they can't do anything. So, but they'd be able to follow along live. But yeah, I wouldn't say you would have that as the main option because you can't expect everyone to have a device with data and everything like that. But that's what's going to be linking the outside, the gym and the auditorium all together is Zoom. So like kind of internally, which also could be allowed. You could have town staff zooming in from home or from the office rather than having them in the building.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just to kind of bring this back, I realize, and I'm just role playing a little bit here, so bear with me, but I know February 6th, I believe we have to set the date. We don't have January 30th as an option anymore. So that's sort of piece number one in my mind. Number two is the time of the session. It's typically 9 a.m. And so do you want to go that route and have it at the same time? And then the third piece would be if everybody, and I don't want to, if everybody is consistent with what the co-op is doing as far as using the main auditorium and the small gym as two venues, what we could do is explore that third option. I'm not sure that materially it changes whether you do the session or don't do the session, if you follow me. It could be that we just evaluate it and come back and say, this is the best we can provide, we think, based upon what the options are for outdoors. I tried to convey what the co-op talked about and what they plan to convey. I think the concern I have here is that we can evaluate different options, but one of the things, and I'll go back to a Town and City article from last year in Henniker, where they had a meeting and they had technology, out the door and everything all set up and nothing worked. And then it became a major, major issue. So I'm just trying to bring this and boil it down so we can try to get to a situation where we know what we're going with and we can sort of compartmentalize and then come back to you maybe on the piece with our best effort on like an outdoor type scenario. And I know Bob wasn't at the meeting last Friday, but Mr. Kremen was, so that my hope would be the two of them would talk in between now and the next steps.
Selectwoman Cowan, if you would allow me just a second. Mr. Dean, I know we have to post the warrant by Monday, the 25th, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
When do we need to decide whether we're going to have a deliberative session or the alternate HB 1129? Does that need to be done Monday as well?
Well, if you do HB 1129, there's a 7-day notice period where you have to notify all registered voters that you're having the information session at least 7 days prior to the session. So,
and that has to be done by mail.
Yeah, and my gut tells me tonight that the clock is ticking, Mr. Chairman, that this is not anything to delay anymore. I really think we're at the 11th hour here.
Okay. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll move that we hold a online deliberative session complete with registering and checking off voters.
I'll second it if you will amend that to add as per HB 1129.
I mean, I am not in favor of HB 1129. I'm not in favor of it. I want town to participate and I want deliberation.
Well,
so I know that I'm making this incredibly difficult, but I want everybody in our town to be safe. And so I am not subjecting it to.
I'll second it without the 1129.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. The motion is to hold a virtual deliberative session. And there's a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
I have a question. Can Ms. Cowan give me a definition of virtual meeting?
I just want something that is safe and provides our voters in town the same safety we provide ourselves by meeting virtually like this.
How do you want this? I'm just asking as a question. How do you want this to start and finish? Everybody can stay home and participate. Is that what you're asking by virtual?
That's what I'm asking by virtual.
Okay,
yes.
So everybody can stay home with a computer, Zoom it, and virtually do it.
Yeah,
like this.
Okay.
And I am also, Paul, open to whatever means you and the supervisors of the checklist come up with to verify voters. If that means, checking in and going home and signing on, or if it means signing on and verifying their address online, it's fine. I don't want to subject anybody to in-person contact right now. Now that, we have 400,000 people dead of COVID-19 in the US. But I also understand, I want to avoid a lawsuit where we can and verify that people who are participating are voters.
Let me ask Mr. Mitchell, what's your thoughts, Walter?
Russ, you had me review your proposed warrant earlier today. And if I'm recalling correctly, because there were a number of different towns that we looked at today, but you had a number of bond articles on there, didn't you?
Yes, we have at least 3 and maybe 4.
Yep.
I frankly wish that the exploration of this third alternative that we're making up as we go along had come up before, so we could have checked this out before this evening. But
I think it did, though. I mean, we've been asking about a virtual since the first time we talked about this.
Right, but just hold on. What I would bet on, but has not been explored, is that your bond counsel, when they find out that you have gone off in another direction, neither the traditional deliberative session nor 1129, I don't think they'll approve your bonding, even if it's supported by the voters. That's my concern.
Selectwoman Gilman.
I would, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a similar kind of question. I don't think we have the option to do a totally virtual meeting with a host of participants on one side. That's not, the state tells us what we can do, and that's not.
That's what I've been saying from the start, and I, as I understand the motion, it is to go in a third direction without any assurance that it would be upheld.
And
sorry. Yep. Okay.
Well, I understand the emotion of, the reason behind it.
I know. I would amend it to require an in-person vote where we have a drive-through vote where we drop our ballots off and get out of there. If we can have a deliberative session that is participatory of the deliberative body online.
The way the law is right now, and absent some kind of additional executive order, you can't do that.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
So I'm just trying to play it out a little bit. So taking Selectwoman Cowan's idea of the deliberative session is live streamed via Zoom, similar to this. We're in person, and we give the option for those who actually want to or think they want to speak. Because I'm pretty certain that most people who are ready to speak at the deliberative session do so knowing in advance that they're going to. So I just think I'm just trying to figure out ways where we really limit the number of people in the physical space, but then also allow for people to come in and vote after. Is the regulation that everyone who is voting must be present during the deliberative session? Because I know that people come in at the last minute and vote without having sat through it. So why can't we do a combination of that where the majority of people are watching from home? We have maybe a 1 hour delay, and then the voting starts, giving people time to sort of roll in. And, we say A through D, you're this block, just to give, traffic. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw out like realistic options so that we're not all column A or all column Z, and people are feeling like this is not going to be worth the health risk.
Would you be willing to do that for every single amendment that is moved on the 18 different articles? Because I think that's what it would, to make it possible and still not trouble-free, but to make it possible, that's what you would have to do, because the voting is not at the end of the meeting.
Right, correct.
The voting is everybody who wants to make a motion as they go along.
So we wouldn't be able to save all the votes to the end, is what you're saying? That legally.
Paul, can you think of any good way to do that?
I can, Walter. I don't see how I can make a motion to Article 3 and have a discussion on it without being voted on, and then going back to Article 3 and discussing
as amended to discuss further.
Yeah, I mean, this could take 4 days doing that, which if that's what it takes, if that's fine. But I don't see where that's going to be a nightmare, Walter. And I believe we have to vote on the amendment before you can continue with any more discussion on the warrant article, no matter what it is.
That warrant article, yes.
Yeah. So, and if someone wants to amend the amendment, how do you have people drive back and forth? You can't. I don't think that's even logistically going to be possible. I mean, because as we all know, one warrant article can take 3 hours just with the people that are in the auditorium. So I don't see where, I understand her intentions on how to do it. I just don't see how that works. I don't think it follows how we're supposed to run the deliberative session anyway.
I would agree. I think we've been dealt a tough hand with this, but I'm going to keep going back to my my initial premise on this with where we are with it and whether we're going to work with the schematic that we have in front of us, and how can we best do that. So we're prepared to hold this. I think either way. I think we've been looking at it from the SB2, from the deliberative session angle, and the HB 1129 angle. The HB 1129 angle does, if the budget does fail, it does allow you to have another meeting about the budget later in the year. It doesn't exactly say what that meeting is, but it does say that you can do it again. You can have another meeting on the budget.
No.
That was my understanding, Walter, from the NHS.
On the operating budget only.
Correct. That's what I meant to say.
Right.
I agree. All the other articles are done.
Yeah, I mean, and operating would include the water operating and the sewer operating. But
Correct.
Beyond that, you can't go back to those others.
Right.
And it has to be done before September 1st.
Right.
Right.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we're getting all these conflicting, good observations, good ideas. You have a motion and 2 seconds, so something's wrong there. And so I'm going to withdraw my second.
Okay.
And I'll move the question just to move this along.
Any other question or discussion?
Does someone want to repeat the motion just to verify what it is? I know Joanne is going to be taking the minutes, but just so we know what it is. Again, is that okay?
I think it was a little messy, but I would like to move that we hold a deliberative session online, verifying voters, allowing for amendments during the meeting, and then moving to a in-person vote if that is necessary following the deliberative session.
Do you mean the election in March?
Mm-mm.
Just to be clear, no?
No, I mean like an actual vote on the deliberative session articles so that we have a legitimate paper vote.
Mr. Chairman, has that been seconded?
I believe Selectman Brown I was going to ask him if he still seconds that motion.
All right, maybe I'll wait I'm trying to find the right spot to ask this question, like what is the backup plan for posting the warrant? But I'll let you deliberate a little bit more and then think about that, because I'm going to need some direction as how to get that done.
Why couldn't you post it as you normally would if this motion passes?
So do I have it right that if this motion passes, we would post a deliberative session for Zoom?
That's the motion on the table, yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear about that, that's all.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, just to verify again for the record, you still second the motion?
I do.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
It's the clerk's turn. I came here with the full intention of doing a virtual meeting. I think that but I think that's what's been proposed goes beyond what the state authorizes us to do. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to say no. Mr. Chair.
While I agree with you, Selectwoman Gilman, and the public health of our citizens is the most important thing. We have been asking our citizens to make sacrifices since March. We have been meeting virtually since March. As Selectwoman Cowan, I believe, alluded to earlier, we have said no to requests for permits. I just think it's shameful that the state has only given us 2 ways to go, and neither one of them are good. I vote aye.
Mr. Chair, after the votes are formalized.
I'm sorry?
I said after the votes formalized, I just want to ask a question.
The motion passes 4-1. Mr. Scafidi?
Yeah, my only question is what happens, and I'm not looking for any answers right now or anything else. Keep it in mind what happens if the state says you can't do that. Like Mr. Dean stated earlier, we're under time constraint right now, so I would suggest somehow we find out whether this vote is okayed by the state and everything can be done. If not, you need a plan B to come up with in a very quick fashion. So, like I said, the moderator, the supervisor, the checklist, the town clerk's office willing to do it any way you guys want to do it. I just want to make sure that if we find out on Thursday or Friday of this week that, nah, you can't do it that way, we better have something really quick to come up with to make sure we meet all the specifications or everything else that we want to do.
Selectwoman Rountree-Olaf.
At this point, I think it's been clear the last year that smaller towns, cities have to start making decisions for their own. Like the mask ordinance, we went ahead and moved forward with it before the state said that that's what was going to be done. And we see what the numbers played out. So we have to do what we have to do to protect our citizens. And I think it may not be seen as, everyone's favorite idea at the state, but they haven't helped us to this point to make a decision that's the safest for our community. So our plan B should be as close to what this is as possible. We've had the discussion points already with what we could do alternatively for both inside and outside. And I think we should explore that and have that option ready to go if this is not something that we can actually do. But we can't keep talking in circles about what ifs. We have to move forward.
I wanted to ask that too, Mr. Chairman, of you to just verify that Plan B would be similar to what the co-op is doing as far as the deliberative session.
Well, I think first of all, I absolutely agree with Selectwoman Rountree-Olaf, and I think that the state has basically left it up to the towns up till now. The governor was able to issue executive orders back in March instructing towns how to hold meetings. The majority of this board just voted 4-1 for a virtual meeting that preserves democracy. And barring any objection from Attorney Mitchell, the governor is going to be served with a letter from this board pleading with him respectfully to issue an executive order. I hope he hears the message. But the answer to your question is, I think the consensus of the board is that if we are told that we cannot do this, then we need to look at a deliberative session that absolutely gives folks, and if it's every single citizen that goes to deliberative session wants to be outside, then we need to find a way to make it work. We need to make people able to not have to worry about getting gravely ill to come to deliberative session. Is that the consensus of the board? Should this not be an option? We want to be able to have folks be outside and participate if that's what their wishes. I'm seeing the heads nodding. So perhaps, Mr. Dean, in the meantime, let's hope the governor will step up. If he doesn't, then, I think with Mr. Glowacki's help and the school's help, we need to start preparing for being outside.
And could I ask, Russ, could you and I and Paul and Vicky possibly have a telephone conversation first thing tomorrow morning as to if you're going ahead with this, what's the best we can do to make it work?
Yes,
I'm available.
I'll be available.
I'm available.
I can be available, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Attorney Mitchell, Mr. Scafidi, Vicky, and obviously the board for once again stepping up and taking matters into our own hands to protect our citizens.
I appreciate also the conversation that it is a very spirited and hard conversation to have. So I know it's been belabored and long and hard. I just want to say thank you because it is a serious conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all the board doing, and we'll just make it work.
Thank you all.
See you all tomorrow.
Okay, we now move on to open our public hearing for the budget. At this time, following normal operating procedure, would entertain a motion to open the bond hearings. After that motion is passed, I'll read the bond articles one by one. We will take public comment at that time, deliberations, and then close the bond hearings and vote on the bond articles. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to open the bond hearings.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. The bond hearing is now open. I will read the first bond article, which is Article 3, the Salem Street Area Water, Sewer, Drainage, Road Improvements, and Utility Replacements. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,100,000 for the design and constructions of water, sewer, drainage, road and utility improvements in the Salem Street area, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $5,100,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for and obtain and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service will be paid from the general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. The estimated tax impact, assuming a 10-year bond at 0.86% interest, it's 5 cents per thousand, $5 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. 3/5 ballot vote is required for approval by the Select Board. And at this time, I would open up public comment to any of the attendees who wish to speak to this. And I'll pause for a moment.
Mr. Chair, it's just a quick comment. As you read the bond articles, what I'd like to do is bring them up on the screen, if that's okay.
Okay.
Because there is one, like the next one, for example, on the solar array. Mr. Sharples provided me some updated language today, so just to, hopefully you can read from the screen.
I'll do my best. There's no public comment with respect to Article 3. Mr. Dean, should we read them all and then the board vote, or should they vote article by article?
That's up to you, Mr. Chairman. You can do either one, whatever you feel is more efficient. Might make sense to vote each one.
Okay, I agree. So seeing no public comment, any comment or discussion from the board on Article 3? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, Mr. Dean, I'll try to read off of this.
Mr. Chair, was that a vote to recommend Article 3? Just double checking.
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. I'll go back and we'll go to the next one.
Can you move it over? You've made it a little larger and I can't read the right side.
Does that work?
Yeah, I think I can read that.
Okay.
This is an article that does not have a number yet because the board needs to vote on how this is going to be done or if it's going to be put on the warrant. This is for the solar array landfill property. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,617,629 for the purpose of constructing a solar array on town-owned land described as map 98 lot 3 and tax map 100 lot 4, and authorize the issuance of not more than $3,617,629 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service will be paid by the revenue generated by selling the power and renewable energy certificates. The estimated tax impact is none, assuming revenues and assuming a 20-year bond at 1.67% interest. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance, and 3/5 ballot is required from the Select Board for approval for this project. And at this time, I would open it up to the public for comment, and I'll pause for a moment.
Just a real quick note, Mr. Chairman, 3/5 of the voters are required for approval.
I beg your pardon. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
I misspoke. Okay, seeing no hands up, I close the public comment and bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah.
Selectwoman Gilman?
Thank you. I always laugh at people who wave their hands instead of raising their hand electronically, but there I was. Yeah, I'd just like to, I guess, advocate for this project. I think it's a great opportunity that we have, and it's meets a goal that we have, and so I am in I don't know what the word is anymore. I'm very encouraged that it's come before us.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting initiative, and I'm in favor of the article as it was written for the town to purchase. And I think it's a testament to our town planner, who has assumed the additional role of, for lack of a term, a sustainability coordinator. And in the year that he's been doing this, he's done a lot of great work promoting sustainability and working with the Sustainability Committee as well as the Energy Committee. So, Mr. Sharples, thank you. I think this is a very exciting initiative for the town. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The chair says aye, Mr. Chair. The clerk
Yes, he
says
does.
aye. Mr. Chair.
The chair says aye. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Dean, to put this on the warrant.
Okay.
Okay. Article 4 is for the wastewater lagoon sludge removal. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,600,000 for the purpose of removing sludge from the wastewater lagoons at 13 Newfields Road, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $2,600,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service to be paid from the sewer fund, and this would require a 3/5 ballot vote for approval by the voters. I'll open this up for public comment. Again, pausing.
Just wanted to mention that this will become Article 5, theoretically, depending on the outcome here.
Okay, seeing no hands, I'll close it to the public and bring it back. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I had a question for our Public Works Director, Ms. Perry, just for public edification. The removal of the sludge will gain us some land area that we can use for a different purpose.
So yes, this would remove sludge from Lagoon 1, which has actually already been removed and is being dewatered over this winter, and then it would have to be trucked off site to be landfilled. We would still have to dewater sludge from Lagoon 2, the old Lagoon 2, and truck that off after it's been dewatered. So the old lagoons 1 and 2 eventually could potentially be used for some other purpose, but there could be some other issues that need to be addressed. And that essentially is they are ponds, right? They are, they have dams, they're embankments, and they are going to collect water until we make a final decision on how those lagoons are, or the embankments and the dams are decommissioned.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, was there a motion to recommend the article? I apologize if I missed that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Aye, if that wasn't clear.
Okay. The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
You might want my vote.
I was going to say.
Sorry. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, very sorry.
No worries. Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. I wasn't going to cut Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Article 5. Which, Mr. Dean, presumably will become Article 6 if all passes.
Correct.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1 million for the purpose of developing groundwater sources in the town, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $1 million of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, debt service to be paid from the water fund, and this ballot vote would require a three-fifths vote for approval. Open it up to the public for discussion. I'm pausing, but Mr. Dean, could you go back to, thank you. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion relative to Article 5? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend Article 5 as written.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectman Cowan. Selectwoman Cowan. I'm all over the place tonight. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Dean, to recommend this.
Okay, and I believe that those are all for the bonds.
That is all for the bonds. I would entertain a motion at this time to close the bond hearings.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. The bond hearing is closed. At this time, I would entertain a motion to open the budget hearing, including all other warrant articles.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan,
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. The budget hearings are now open. Before we get to reading the warrant articles, we have the chair of the Budget Recommendations Committee, Bob Kelly, here, as well as two members of the Facilities Committee, Chair Chris Weeks and Vice Chair Peter Lennon. In our packet, we all read a letter from the Facilities Committee regarding two of the warrant articles, and we also heard Mr. Kelly. I'd like to give each of them an opportunity just to summarize their thoughts on the warrant articles, refresh the board's memory, and then we'll go forward to reading the warrant articles. So the Budget Recommendations Committee has already presented to us. Chairman Weeks of the Facilities Committee wrote the letter that we had in our packet earlier today. So I'll open it up to both you, Mr. Weeks, and Mr. Lennon, if you want to briefly summarize your thoughts for us. You're muted, Chris.
Testing.
There you are. Hi, Chris.
Hi, sorry about that. My apologies. Yeah, I'll briefly summarize what was in the letter. So we had a couple recommendations on two articles. The first one was for the new public safety complex, and the other one was for the DPW garage. The Facilities Committee, we visited both of those sites this summer and spoke with the people involved, the respective department chiefs, and also the director, Jen Perry, of the Department of Public Works. And both facilities exhibited a need to move forward with some sort of design to either renovate or create new facilities. They both demonstrated a clear need for those. After reviewing them, we recommend for the public safety complex, we would like to see $150,000 to $200,000 appropriated for the first phase of the public safety complex. And that would be for a feasibility study that would accomplish the following. It would develop a few options for us to evaluate to come up with the best one operationally and fiscally for the town. It would allow several points of robust public input so that we could generate public support for a preferred final design. And then it would also help us set a project budget to go into the next phase, which would be final design and construction. For the DPW, at this point, we couldn't recommend the funding for it, only because, as I said, we did see a need demonstrated for the garage, but we just didn't see any specific scope or proposal from the DPW's designer as to what the $100,000 would be spent for. So absent that sort of specific information at this time, we just couldn't recommend it. We would love to see a more detailed proposal and to see what that $100,000 would be spent for. And with that, Peter, if you want to follow up with anything, otherwise we can take questions.
Mr. Lennon, did you have anything to add?
Nope, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Weeks or Mr. Lennon from the board? Selectman Brown, I know you're the Facilities Committee Select Board rep. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just appreciate the diligence that the committee has put on this. I think it's really important to understand the quality of when there is a recommendation, that there's quality investigation behind it, including a non-recommendation, that there's what it means. So I'm really proud of their work for sure. I like to say I had an active role in it. I did not. So thank you, committee, for doing amazing work, and I support the decision fully.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I just want to repeat what Selectman Brown said, that I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the well-written expression of what the pros and cons and how we should step forward. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just me.
Not yet.
Okay.
You're next. Yes, thank you both, and thank Mr. Corson, Mr. Layton, and Ms. Kelly for the hard work and dedication that you put in. I think you meet twice a month at least, and we appreciate the thoughtfulness and the thoroughness of your report. We'll be obviously talking to both warrant articles. If you gentlemen want to stick around, that'd be great. And now we have the chair of the Budget Recommendations Committee, Mr. Bob Kelly. Mr. Kelly?
I might have something to add after Bob, just reserving the right.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Nico. I appreciate you having me on. A couple of issues that the BRC wrestled with regarding both of these. Actually, three issues. One is that we've had some recent experience where we went ahead and put a, for lack of a better term, a pile of money out to for a project for a design without a lot of preliminary input. And in the end of that preliminary design, it wasn't anything that really anyone in town or very few people in town wanted to support, and was far more expensive than we thought. What the BRC was trying to do here is to keep both processes moving along without overcommitting. If you recall from looking through the CIP book, which I'm sure all of you do on a regular basis, the public safety complex is not even in the CIP. What has been in the CIP for the last 10 years is a new substation out on Ebbing Road. Granted, things have changed over the last year and the dialogue has changed, and frankly, I think for the better. However, we felt very strongly that it was worthwhile starting that process with some funding, but not going overboard, because the scope of it hasn't even been worked out internally. We've had discussions with both chiefs, and by we, I mean the Police and Fire Subcommittee of the BRC. And they were both very much on board with this process. They liked the idea that they were even being heard for this kind of situation where we were looking at either a new complex or a split police fire operation. And they were very willing, and I'll let the chiefs speak to that, but without putting words in their mouth, they were very willing to sort of crawl before we walk type of thing. And they felt that it was a really good collaborative effort, and totally different than what we have done in the past, where the BRC sees a proposal in October or November, has to make somewhat of a split second decision on it, and then we're not really involved again until the next year. We're trying to change that dynamic, where the BRC and we've met with the facilities committee. So I think it's going to be a joint effort where we actually work with the departments and develop that internal scope of work. There's a lot of talent in this town. I'm a professional engineer myself. I know Chris is a professional architect. The chair of the facilities committee is a professional architect. Peter has a lot of experience with facilities in the military. These are really good resources that I think the town should take advantage of, as opposed to immediately hiring an outside consultant and letting them drive the bus. I think these projects are all important enough that we need to take some time internally to review these. Having said that, we have started down the road on the public works garage. Jen has had this in the CIP for a while, and I just think we've started the process with a little bit of assessment money last year. we were proposing a little bit more this year to try to fine tune our spatial requirements and some of our siting and the logistics of building a new garage when you have an older garage and all of that. So again, we're not quite ready to hire a big time consultant, spend $250,000 and do a design. We wanted to do that in-house analysis using a combination of facilities expertise, budget expertise, as well as the departments, all of us being intimately involved in that. And the third issue that the BRC is wrestling with is that if you go through the financials in the back of the most recent book, our debt service for both the general fund and if you include water and sewer, and 60% of the registered voters in town, 60% of the taxpayers in town also pay water and sewer bills. So if you look at the debt service with all of those three funds, we've doubled our debt service in the last year. Now, granted, a lot of that is due to the wastewater plant. But again, 60% of us pay that bill as well. In the next 3 years, the debt service projection is to go up by another 50%. These are really serious numbers. We had to really bite the bullet last year to pay a $4 million bond payment for the wastewater plant, and that's going on for another 20 years. My point is, and I apologize for rambling here, but my point is we have some serious potential expenses in front of us, and all of them are good projects, including the rec proposal, which will probably resurface in the next year or two or three in some other form. These are all multi-million-dollar projects that I think most people in town feel are quality projects, but we need to organize them correctly. And I think that this year, that's what we should be doing, is organizing our thoughts, organizing our budget needs over the next 5 to 6 years, and seeing how things lay out. And I just don't see us ready to do a needs assessment, except for internally with some architects that are already on board to provide us with some advice. So that's my pitch, and I think I speak for the BRC in general, because we deliberated quite extensively on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lynn.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a couple of comments. The first is that the recommendation by the Facilities Committee on the public safety complex does not propose throwing a lot of money at a particular design, as Bob is critical of. And we would probably agree with Bob that it's not time to begin the design. And we certainly don't want to throw a lot of money at anything. What the analytical work that is the basis for our recommendation that we're calling for is a feasibility study that would, at the end of the study, provide us with a preferred option and a good preliminary cost estimate for whatever that preferred option is. And it would allow for robust public input during the process so that we don't get to the situation that Bob referred to, where at the end of the day, there's a project that is more expensive than the voters of Exeter are willing to support. We developed the 150,000 to 250,000, 200,000, based on an RFP outline that the Facilities Committee drafted for the feasibility study that would provide for all of these things. So basically, the first point is that all of the things that Bob is worried about being done with the money, that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is to provide the information to Bob and the town and to us that the town needs to make a decision. Secondly, the emerging consensus that Bob is talking about as far as an option for the town is not a well-vetted option. The $100,000 was predicated upon the idea that we would renovate the fire department and we would build a new police department on town land off Epping Road, where they had always wanted to have a fire station. And that option would also, at the police department, have 3 bays for fire department vehicles. That's going to be probably just as expensive as any other option. We're talking $10 to $15 million for that. Whether it's that, but we can't say that that's the right option. It's way preliminary. There hasn't been the analysis that would support that. And putting $100,000 in to go to advance that option is way premature. If we're going to ask the voters for ultimately $10 to $15 million for whatever option is the preferred option for a new police fire facilities arrangement, renovated or new or some combination, we really need to have the analysis that is called for in the feasibility study that we recommend. And we work with Dave Sharples, and he can speak for himself, but I think everybody on the screen knows me. I'm not a person who wants to throw money at any problem. And my record on the Budget Recommendations Committee was pretty clear about that. But we worked with Dave Sharples, and he worked with some outside sources informally. And we believe, based on our experience and the information he was able to develop, that $150,000 to $200,000 is the right number to get the job done, to enable us to have a good project that we can educate the voters about and hopefully get their support. As far as the public works garage, the problem with putting any money against the public works garage this year is that we really don't know what the project's going to be. We spoke with Jen Perry. We did a walkthrough. We've asked all kinds of questions. The project in the CIP, the dollar signs for that project are already outdated. There's 5 years of inflation that aren't included for the fuel island. There's 1 year of inflation that's not included for the main building. So the $5 million that's in the CIP is just completely out of date just for inflation. Secondly, as Chris said, there's no detailed scope of work for what the $100,000 would buy. There was a detailed scope of work for what the $25,000 that you gave them last year would buy. And if we're going to give $100,000 to people, we ought to get a pretty detailed idea of what they're going to spend the money on. And that doesn't exist. Or if it does exist, our ability to get it out of the town staff, our inability to get it out of the town staff, has led in part to why we recommend no money. The last thing about the Public Works garage facility is we have been given at least 2 concepts for the garage. One is the $15,000 square foot garage in the CIP, which is how they developed the $5.1 million estimate, which is out of date. But we were also given a 39,000 square foot building as a possible alternative. Now, we've asked questions about, well, which is it? We've asked questions about how much is it going to cost? We've asked for updated cost estimates. We have not gotten that. And before we think, the Facilities Committee thinks, before we put any money against any project, it needs to be a lot better defined than what it is now. So that is why we would recommend no money this year. We can get the information as part of next year's budget process. That would be fine. We can all analyze it then and see whether it's worthy of $100,000 next year. But this year, there's no there to fund. Thanks.
So thank you. And I invited both facilities and BRC to give a quick overall summary. I don't want to get too specific into the projects. They're only 4 or 5 warrant articles to read before we come to those. So I'd invite the three of you to stay with us, and then maybe we could have some dialogue with Jennifer and the chief respectively. But thank you, all three of you, for your summaries. And we will now go to the first article in the general budget, the 2021 operating budget, Article 7. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $19,891,082. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $19,978,374, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The estimated tax impact is to be determined per 1,000 assessed property value and to be determined for 100,000 assessed property value. Majority vote will be required by the voters. I'll open this up to the public.
And I usually do a little presentation with this, Mr. Chairman, so I'm happy to do that too.
I would love that. Thank you.
We actually have to do it. I just also wanted to point out that the estimated tax impact's been updated to 22 cents per thousand of assessed property value and $22 per 100,000 of assessed value.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, you go ahead with your presentation, please.
Okay, so the first slide just shows a little bit of our recent budget history with the town. The FY21 budget, as you see, is $19,891,082. That's a 1.46% increase over FY20. And then our recent tax rate history, you can see 2019 was a reval year. We have been progressively dropping that rate. We did go up 20 cents per thousand in 2020, just this past go around. And then I've shared this before, but our town share is actually approximately 23% of the total tax levy at this time. It has vacillated over the years, but right now it's 23. It has been, I think, as high as 29, most times right in 25, 26, 27%. So just in terms of our general fund budget discussion, you can see up here the dollar amounts increases of which makes up the 1.46% is $285,545 over the FY20 budget. And those of you who are familiar with the budget know that it encompasses all of our town operations, including general government, our financial administration, planning, building, economic development, police, fire, EMS, communications, and health, DPW general fund, DPW maintenance, welfare, human service agency grants, parks and rec, other culture and rec, the library budget, debt service and capital, and then benefits and taxes townwide. In terms of our general fund notes, the largest three departments continue to be police, fire, EMS, and DPW, and these budgets make up 70% of the total town budget. In this year's budget, some of the highlights include the library construction, the first year bond payment that's due in 2021. That's $417,166 all by itself. So you can see that the 285 is a overall increase, but the 417 is actually higher than that. And then employee wages, we have a cost of living adjustment scheduled for July for non-union employees of 1%. The fire and public works contracts are on their last year of their current agreement, and the police contract is part of a separate warrant article. Right now, that's Article 10, would become Article 11. In terms of benefits, our health insurance increase this past year was 2.5% for all plans. The employees contributing 13% to Access Blue New England, and employees are contributing 20% to our Blue Choice plan as of July 2021. One of our larger increases in the FY21 budget is retirement. That is up $148,110 in the general fund. That was due to a retirement system adjustment that's due to go into effect July of 2021. We do have an elections decrease in FY21. We're down to 1. And then many accounts have also been decreased to reflect expense reductions in out-of-state travel, as an example. In terms of the notes, just continuing, assessing software and hardware, we had a one-time expense reduced. We went to the cloud and had to pay a fee for that for an upgrade. That has been taken out of this year's budget. Also, our health officer and our fire department have successfully negotiated our mosquito control contract. So we'll see a savings there. We do have increased solid waste costs. That's a contract payment due to waste management. And then one new position's been approved for the budget, as you voted on last week. That is the network administrator that will be budgeted for 8 months in the FY21 budget. We've also reduced the paving budget by $100,000 in FY21, again, trying to be conservative. And then townwide expenses are fixed costs that encompass all departments are up by $28,000 over FY20. This slide shows the components of the budget, as you see here, by department and by function. So you can see quite a few of them are reduced in nature. Again, just to reiterate some of the reductions I pointed out, but we also do have some wage and benefit changes that are part of the FY21 budget, and that would include things like retirements and replacing people at lower steps in our step scale, so that we benefit financially from that. You can see down here in the debt service capital, that's obviously the big increase, and part of that is the library bond. We do have some debt retirement, which is helping that line. And we've also, instead of purchasing vehicles in FY21, we've deferred that for a year while we do a townwide vehicle audit, just to do a spot update and check on our use of town vehicles and how we're buying and what we're buying. This is the pie chart. Nothing too super exciting there, but it does show the largest shares of our budget. And then our revenue categories, the biggest categories we have are motor vehicle registration fees, building permits. We generate a little over $3 million a year in motor vehicle reg fees, building permits anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000. Blue bag solid waste fees, which this past year, because of COVID-19, were quite a bit higher than in past years. So a lot of trash being generated at home from people, and understandably so. And then we have other department income, and that's usually about $1 million, a little over. The highway block grant aid that we get from the state, the meals and rooms tax, local distribution, and then every year we put a little bit, or we put some of our prior year fund balance against the tax rate, and we use it to offset a share of the budget. And this year coming, we have put aside $800,000 predicted to apply against the budget. So you can see the total taxes raised would be approximately $12.5 million, as compared to the 20 budget, which was $11.9 million. Any questions so far? I'll carry on. The FY21 default budget. What happens, this budget goes into effect if the operating budget is voted down, and it does not impact voting on separate warrant articles. And then as we look at, there's a statutory definition of the default budget. Same appropriations as contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased as the case may be by debt service contracts and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by one-time expenses contained in the operating budget. One-time expenses are appropriations not likely to recur in the succeeding budget. So this year, one of the things that has happened is the default budget is actually higher than the general fund budget request. Part of that has to do with when you look at the definition of contracts, and I know Selectwoman Gilman's well-versed in this, the legislature amended the law to actually reflect that you are supposed to use the number for approved contracts in the prior year. So when you do a default budget, for example, we're saving money on mosquito control, but when we do the default budget, we actually use the prior year number, which is higher by about $11,000. So it can happen in a tight budget year where you're close to, a low percentage increase, that your default actually ends up higher, and that's what's happened here. I'll get into the water fund later and the sewer fund, but this is the general fund default components. As you can see, just by function, comparing the FY21 budget to the FY21 default budget. And again, in your packets, it has that all broken down by line item. And so just to conclude on this, the General Fund Town Operations Article 7, or it would be Article 8 now with the renumbering of the warrant. The proposed budget is 1.46% over FY20. The default budget is actually 1.90% over the FY20 budget, so it's higher than the operating budget. The FY20 budget, you can see the numbers here again. This is just reflective of the FY21 budget is $285,545 over FY20. The operating budget impact would be $564 per thousand. We're calculating the default budget, because it's higher, would actually be a little bit of a higher impact. And then the overlay and veterans credits would add another 20 cents per thousand to the final town tax rate. So you get a projection based on including the overlay and credits of 584 versus 591. This assumes a 1% increase in the net taxable valuation established September 2020. So that's it on the general fund budget. Are there any questions? I can walk through the water fund now. The water fund budget, the proposed budget is $4,054,184. That's a 14.1% increase over the FY20 budget. And the default budget for water is a 2.26% increase over the FY20 budget. The major change here between the operating and the default budget has to do with capital outlay. In the water department, in capital outlay, you're seeing a large increase because the surface water treatment plant, lagoon cleaning, and upgrades to the surface water plant are included in the operating budget, and that actually illustrates the gap between the two budgets. So that's what those things are, and that was a determination made during the Budget Recommendations Committee process. In terms of programs, you can see them here. In the water budget, we have administration, we have billing, we have the distribution system, we have water treatment. That's our operations and maintenance for the various plants. And I did note in here that chemicals are down 26,000 for the upcoming year in that particular area. Also, the debt service budget for the water budget includes our major debt service issues, and the JD Hill water lines are part of that. They'll be retired in FY21, so they'll be the last year of a payment that's a little over $100,000. And then the capital outlay I mentioned before, there's a hook lift truck lease payment that's in there as a fixed cost, and then the FY21 budget, other capital outlay make up the large amount of that $515,330. Any questions on the water fund? Okay. On the sewer fund, the proposed budget is $7,015,364. That's an 8.73% decrease under the FY20 budget. And the default budget is $6,942,533. That's a 9.68% decrease under the FY20 budget. Again, major budget changes include the first full year of facility utility costs identified in the budget. Those were downward changes. Those happened in the biosolids processing and also the electricity budgets. So we are due for a rate review in 2021, so we will be looking at that. But we can look at the budget from FY20, and you can see that the FY20 budget was about $671,000 higher in FY20 than the FY21 budget. So it's dropped quite a bit this year. And these are the programs in the sewer fund. They essentially mirror the water fund the same way. Administration, the billing, budgets, sewer collection, which is our collection system, the sewer treatment program. And again, there's an electricity reduction here of 62,000. There's a solids handling reduction of 56,000 in that budget. And then the debt payments, these are down quite a bit from FY20. And that's making up the difference between this number down here and the budget from FY20. So that big decrease. So just to summarize, the general fund proposed budget 19,891,082, that is minus 0.44%. So it's a lower amount than the default number. The water fund is 11.59% over the default budget. And again, that's mostly capital, as we talked about. And then the sewer fund is 1.05%. The sewer fund budget as proposed is 1.05% over the default. And I will stop there.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dean. We have one attendee from the public. I don't know if there's any comment on the budget. I'll pause for a moment. And seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Article 7, operating budget. Any questions or discussion from the board? Okay, then seeing none, I would entertain a motion to recommend the 2021 operating budget under Article 7.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously to recommend Article 7. Article 8, 2021 Water Fund Budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a water operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles or other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,045,184. Should this article be defeated, the water default budget shall be $3,633,083, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law, requires majority vote at the election.
Mr. Chairman, can I just raise a quick issue with you?
Yeah.
The actual number, and I apologize, there's a typo in Article 8. It should be $4,054,184 and not $4,045,000.
Okay, so noted. Thank you. Opening it up to the public. Any comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion regarding the water fund budget? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 8, the 2021 water fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Article 9, the 2021 sewer fund budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a sewer operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $7,015,364. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $6,942,533, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law, majority vote required. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion from the board regarding the sewer fund budget? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to recommend Article 9, the 2021 sewer fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously to recommend it. Article 10, Police Collective Bargaining Agreement. To see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Select Board and the Exeter Police Association, which calls for the following increased salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. Year FY21, the estimated salary benefits increase would be $26,459. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $26,459 for the 2021 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels. And I'll open this up to the public. Seeing no questions or comment, I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the board. Any discussion or questions regarding Article 10? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 10, the police collective bargaining agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Article 11, the Kingston Road Shoulders. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,130,000 for the purpose of constructing widened shoulders, bike paths, and sidewalks on Kingston Road, with $235,653 to come from the town's unassigned fund balance, $744,347 through a New Hampshire Department of Transportation grant, and $150,000 previously transferred from the Arterial Shoulders Capital Reserve Fund, and furthermore, to authorize the Select Board to accept any state, federal, and other grants and gifts related to this project. This article will not become effective unless the New Hampshire Department of Transportation grant is awarded to the town. This article will not impact the tax rate. This will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:7, Roman numeral 6, and will not lapse until the project is completed or December 31st, 2025, whichever is later. Majority vote would be required. And I'll open this up to the public. Okay, seeing no hands, I'll close it to the public. Open it up to the board for questions or discussion. And I don't see any hands. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 11, the Kingston Road Shoulders.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. There is a fiscal note on that. The project was unable to be constructed in the time frame allotted by Article 17 of the 2017 town meeting. Therefore, this article that was just recommended is being requested to extend the appropriation.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to just make a quick note for you that we are working with town council on the wording of this article specifically, so it may vary slightly from what you see here in its final product.
Okay. Okay, for the next two, Mr. Dean, after I read them, if you could bring the screen back, because I think there's going to be some discussion.
Will do.
Article 12, excuse me, Public Works Facility Garage Design. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $100,000 for the purposes of design work toward a new garage at the Public Works Complex on Newfields Road. This sum to come from general taxation, $60,000, water funds, $20,000, and sewer funds, $20,000. The estimated tax impact is 2 cents per thousand, $2.73 per 100,000 assessed property value, and a majority vote would be required. I'll first open it up for public comment. And there's no public, so we will bring it back to the board for any questions or discussion. Jennifer, I'd also, DPW Director Jennifer Perry, like to ask you to weigh in if you would.
Yes, thank you. As most of the board, I believe, is aware, we were working with Lassell Architects this past year in 2020 on the beginnings of a needs assessment for the Public Works facility. We did not have a report from them until the end of the year, in about just before Christmas. We did receive the draft report that reviewed the needs assessment and kind of develop the next recommendation of work that should be conducted in 2021 or following years. And probably the most important work that needs to proceed is the adjacent property. The town acquired a 4.7 acre parcel of land that abuts the Public Works facility and is on the same side of the railroad that we have been considering for potential expansion. However, we don't have any topographic information. We haven't done any wetlands analysis, and so we don't really know how developable it is, and that's an important factor that we need to consider to be able to move forward with any recommendations. But I think the report, which is posted on the town website, it's not finalized. We are still providing some comments back to LASL that need to be addressed. Do identify the shortcomings of the facilities that we have, and they're considering the ultimate demolition of at least two of those facilities, the highway garage and the maintenance building. It's a block building that's more towards the water and sewer garage side. Because of their poor condition and their inability to meet many needs, structural needs, ventilation needs, and the needs of the department. And one of the other important aspects of the work that was done this year was to take us beyond the initial space that was identified for the Public Works garage. The 15,000 square foot area was based on the existing area. And one of the aspects that LASL helped us work through was trying to identify not just what our existing needs are, but what are going to be the needs for the next decade or so. We know that there's a lot more work going on in stormwater. There's a lot more needs as far as GIS. We're going to need additional staffing. We can't store all of our equipment under roof in heated conditions at this point. And so that's why there has been an increase in the size of the facility. Those numbers aren't baked at all at this point. They're still very preliminary. And I think the way that we look at it is we've done a very preliminary start to assessing the needs of the department. And the next phase is to really work with, as Mr. Kelly and Mr. Weeks have indicated, there are many qualified people on committees that we want to engage to take it to the next step. There's more work that needs to be done beyond just doing a topo and wetlands of the adjacent parcel. We need to continue to discuss what the programming needs are for the department. There had been identification of a potential space for other departments that may be overwhelmed or squeezed into town office or town hall. And that's an important discussion that needs to be held at this level and with others. So there are a lot of moving pieces. And I just appreciate the time to give you a little bit more information about what was conducted this past year and what we were hoping to continue with.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or discussion?
So Director Perry, does that continuing investigation require expenditure, or can it just be master plan discussions with different committees and departments in town?
Certainly the master plan type of discussions can be held at the, locally, let's say. But I think that there are other aspects that we would recommend that our architects be involved with. But that can wait. It doesn't have to be in 2021.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Kelly or facilities, do you have anything to add that wasn't spoken to already about this?
I just have more of an administrative comment. The wording of the warrant article, I think, if I recall, it says design, and that's obviously not what this is. So whether we call it continued assessment, analysis, whatever the appropriate word is, but I think to non-fund this would be, Jen has shown, considering all the other balls she has in the air with regulatory requirements, water, sewer, and otherwise, the fact that she's been able to move this along and on a nice, methodical but slow basis until we can sort of get our hands around where it fits into the budget, I think we need to continue that momentum. And as Select Board Member Brown indicated, it doesn't necessarily, we don't have to have an architect all over this, but it would be worthwhile having something in place. Peter's exactly, we don't have a detailed scope for the 100,000, but it seemed to the BRC that was a reasonable step prior to design, is to let's flesh out over the next year what we have for alternatives, have the architect put together some nice sketches and analysis justifications, and then make those presentations to the town. That's going to require some resources. So I think the BRC is understanding this and would vehemently oppose non-funding this. And if it's a different number, then it's a different number. But I think, if we don't spend 100,000 this year, then we spend it next year. I mean, the money's going to be spent. This project will be done sometime in the next 10 years. So I think we continue the momentum that we've started, sharpen up our focus a little bit, figure out between facilities what we have as a facility, and BRC what we can afford, present that to the Select Board accordingly. So we stand by our recommendation, and I think we need to continue the momentum that we started.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, everybody who's worked on this. And I can certainly understand that, we can't have plans without resources. But Jen, when you said, we could have these discussions or we can push this, what did you mean? Like, would that mean that you're okay with if we said, let's change the number here to 10,000 instead of 100,000? Like, would that get your objective together? Because on the one hand, I want to be mindful, of whatever budget shortfalls are going to come, because we just don't know what's going to happen because of COVID, and then also be mindful of how much money we're spending, while also recognizing that this has been something on the agenda and in the CIP for a while. And so I just would kick it over to you and ask for where you lie there, where you would come down.
So what I was trying to say is that there are definitely some programmatic kind of decisions and discussions that need to be held in the town to decide what, if there could be a department move over to the public works site, if, where we could potentially be growing with our staffing and fleet. Those are all decisions and kind of timing those out. I don't think by doing that, though, that we're going to come back with any greater information or insights to move the project forward. It's going to delay the project by a year because we really do need to assess the adjacent site. That alone is going to be probably a $20,000 to $25,000 piece of that $100,000. And we do want to be able to be back around in just under a year from now with better information as far as what are the alternatives, what's a reasonable size facility for the request, and And it may not even be a year. It may wind up being in 2023 because it takes time to vet those alternatives and make sure that what we're moving forward with a recommendation for design and future construction. So it's more, I do think that the $100,000 level was developed with trying to get answers to questions so that we would be able to plug in good information in future years as far as design and construction. So I hope that answers your question, select person Cowan.
Select woman. Or Molly as well. Yeah, I mean, that's helpful because, one of the things that I've learned in kicking the can down the road, you just make things more expensive. Or then you're forced to spend more money because you didn't take care of the problem the first time when it came up and when there was still feasible buildings to have everything else. So I'm mindful of that. And I'm also, I'm thinking about a couple of things. I'm thinking about cost and what I think our taxpayers can bear. And I'm also thinking about length of the deliberative session if we end up in person and wanting to avoid conflict. So those are the two things that I'm sort of weighing here. And it looks like there's other people who would like to talk, so I will yield the floor.
Thank you, Selectwoman Cowan. Facilities Committee Vice Chair Lennon.
Thank you. My reaction to what Jen has said is that it only further reinforces the need to not put a significant amount of money into this warrant article. As I said, nothing she has said has demonstrated that we really have a decent enough handle on what it is we need to do to be able to solve the DPW's garage facility problems. And I think I must admit as well, Jen has already said to us that, and I know she's just said it here, but I want to reinforce it. This project is going to be delayed until fiscal 23 anyway. We knew that actually several months ago before the final report by LaSalle. So it was another reason why there was no urgency to put a lot of money into, in our minds, to put a lot of money into this fiscal year. Secondly, I have to point out that it's kind of ironic that Bob is arguing that we shouldn't do a full-up, decent feasibility analysis of alternatives for the fire and police department facilities issues, but he's willing to put $100,000 against doing that kind of detailed analysis into the public works garage when we don't even have as much information about the public works department and its future missions and what other departments can be used and what operational considerations there are with DPW as we do with the fire and police department, thanks to the $50,000 public safety studies. So if I guess my reaction is, if you want to show momentum, then again, there's no there to put the money against. But if you wanted to maintain momentum, at a minimum, you wouldn't put in more than, or at a maximum, you might want to consider not putting in more than 25,000. And actually, the number that Selectwoman Cowan came up with, a 10,000, seems just as supportable to provide whatever additional analysis that may be necessary after the town makes some very important decisions. I mean, the town, Bob's explanation of having the architect hired and to give us some schematics and some designs, I mean, that's exactly what got the Parks and Recs department in trouble and what yielded a voter opposed project. Unless the town makes the decisions that need to be made before we put money for architects, we're not going to have a very good idea of what we want and what even architects can design. So I would think that we need to. I would urge you to really reconsider putting any money in, but putting in at a minimum amount if you wanted to signal some kind of momentum. Because I don't know what momentum means here. There's no momentum yet, and there won't be momentum until the town makes the important decisions it needs to make to establish what the project looks like going forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman.
Yes, this question is for Mr. Lennon. If I read the letter correctly from the Facilities Advisory Committee, there's some question about there needing to be further master planning of the complex, or are you talking about just the garage and the assessment of that?
I can speak to that, Peter, if you want.
Sure.
That just came about as we had our discussions with Jen and her team. As far as what they were looking to do with the money, it kind of ranged to us over a variety of projects. And one of those was a master plan. And another option was some of the garage design to replace the garage. So to us, there was kind of a floating target there as to what the money would be used for. And it could have been used exclusively for master planning or exclusively for garage or some combination of both.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, could you refresh my memory? The vote on this by the BRC, was this a unanimous vote? Do you recall?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, just to refresh everyone's memory, the original ask by both departments, police, fire, as well as public works, for this next step was, well, originally for police and fire was $400,000, and then that went down to $200,000. I don't want to get into a tit for tat here, but I don't see, irrespective of the public safety report, we're no further along on the public safety complex than we are on the public works garage, because quite simply, it's not even on it hasn't even been conceived yet enough to be in the CIP. So I think both projects, the point here is that both projects are reasonable for the town to consider. There are environmental and structural issues in the public works garage that have been well known for years. So there are some facilities needs there that are pretty well documented. Eric Wilking and Stefan Boyan have documented their, sort of a near-term vision on how, the facilities might shake out. Yeah, we can look at 5 different options, but they have actually done some hard thinking over the past several months as to what really suits their needs, as well as suiting the town of Exeter's needs. So I think that this next year is a watershed year as far as being able to get the public more intimately involved. And when I say public, I mean the volunteers that are here, the volunteer experts, work with the departments and provide some monies for them to go forward. We don't know if we're going to spend $100,000 in either department. We may or we may not. The point is the projects are going to go forward on some time frame, and the money doesn't go away at the end of 2021. It was more just placeholders on either account to keep them moving along, in addition to the rec proposal, so that over the next 3 years, we can figure out what we can afford as a town. So master planning out at the Public Works Garage is going to be more a function of what we can afford not what the Public Works Department needs as far as a campus goes. We know what they need, a better environment, better structure, garage, but beyond that, this is going to come down to a budget issue. And we're just trying to click things along and now provide some resources so that we can all make decisions 2 or 3 years down the road that don't bankrupt us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, did you have one final thought?
Yeah, one final thought. Parking $100,000 in the Public Works budget is just unjustified, Bob, to show momentum and to begin to address their needs. And there's not a lot of analytical basis for that $100,000. There wasn't a lot of analytical basis for the $150,000. So I would urge the select board to be very careful about parking $100,000 when A, the project's already delayed, B, it hasn't really, the $100,000 hasn't been justified. As far as the public safety complex, as smart as Chiefs Poulin and Wilking are, their preferred design is only one of several options that need to be looked at. And it's way premature to look at just that option. And that's all the $100,000 is intended to get you. And there's no amount of volunteer work, as smart as Bob Kelly is, or Peter Lennon, or Chris Weeks, or the select board, and the police chiefs, that's going to be able to do the analytical work that a good feasibility study will do. So we can talk about doing it in-house, but we're deluding ourselves if we actually think we're going to get a quality product that's going to be able to then go to the voters and say, we need to have $10 to $15 million for this, whatever this is. Which is why we came up with 150 to 200,000 for the feasibility study. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on the board willing to make a motion on Article 12?
Mr. Chair, maybe before you make a motion, I'd just say there might be two questions on the table here. One is voting on the article itself, and then, well, that's why
I didn't know if somebody wanted to make a motion for the article as written. Did they want to amend it? The dollar figure?
I know what I'm hearing is this program and site evaluation work at the Public Works Complex, because it does not just involve the garage, it involves the other buildings as well.
So I think somebody made the point earlier, Mr. Dean, that it probably needs to be reworded, the article.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm willing to work with the director to make that happen, depending on the outcome of this conversation. I will say again, as Director Perry pointed out, the December 18th report from LaSalle goes through a variety of different things, including looking at spatial needs assessments for the administration building, for the garage, and for some other things. So that's why I worded it the way I did.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move that we send this back to the town manager, and hopefully we can involve the Facilities Advisory Committee as well, but to basically provide documentation towards what exactly we would be spending this on in the coming year.
So are you looking to not recommend Article 12?
Definitely not recommend. I was thinking about just taking it off, voting to remove this, but I'm also open to basically something more transparent where we know what we're using.
For the sake of this warrant, though, which needs to be posted Monday, I mean, we need to make a motion to either recommend it, not recommend it, or we can amend it.
All right. I move that we do not recommend.
Okay, we have a motion to not recommend Article 12 as written. Is there a second? Is there a second? Let's get a second for discussion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Selectwoman Cowan.
Yeah, I can completely, I understand both sides of this argument, but I also, when I hear that this hasn't been vetted or, we haven't really talked about it or we don't know exactly what's happening, that I think is discounting a lot of the good work that, the people who were elected to serve on the Budget Recommendations Committee did. And this wasn't something that they just did, with no thought or foresight or anything. And so, I really want to have, talk about the process because I want to be as open and transparent as we possibly can. There was an open and transparent process. It happened. The Budget Recommendations Committee met in public, on Zoom and noticed all of their meetings and talked with Jennifer Perry and had this conversation with the fire chief and the police chief. So I don't want to have it sound like there's not a transparent process, because there is. And I also don't want to discount the fact that we've been talking about this for years. We know that there's going to have to be something that we do, whether or not it's this specific thing or something else. Like eventually the town is going to have to take care of its property and ensure that our departments have what they need. So, while I think we can argue about what's how much money to put here, my concern, frankly, is I don't think we have enough money post-COVID. So I don't know that I'm comfortable recommending it because of that. But I don't think that we don't have a transparent process where people aren't having an opportunity to weigh in. What I think that there is room here for next year to have more collaboration between committees, because we do have experts. We have experts on a lot of our committees, and it would be great to have their volunteer work to drive this process. But when I hear that this process wasn't transparent or we didn't think about that doesn't ring true for me. And I feel the need to stand up and defend our town and our volunteers and the people, frankly, who are elected to do this process.
Were you listening to the Facilities Advisory Committee?
I'm sorry?
I'm responding to the Facilities Advisory Committee's statement.
Okay.
And the Facilities Committee, also is transparent, and their meetings are on Zoom and they're posted as well.
Can I say something?
Mr. Weeks, I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second on the floor, so I can't have public comment at this time. Procedurally.
If they had all the data they needed, we would have a clear recommendation from them or a statement as to why they don't recommend. They didn't have the information they needed fully, so they cannot recommend. So, we're going to take it on the BRC's word that, okay, let's put this money in. Not sure how much, because things do need to be done. Not exactly sure what that is, because the advisory committee wasn't quite sure because they didn't have enough data when they needed it. So it doesn't have to be villainous to be not transparent when it needed to be. The Facilities Advisory Committee needed transparency when they needed to make a recommendation. They did not have that, so they cannot make a recommendation. So we're taking a recommendation from a committee that was charged to look at the budget, not charged to look at facilities projects.
Selectwoman Gilman, and then Selectwoman Cowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, just to clarify, what we're voting on right now is what has been presented to us as written, and which includes more than just replacing the garage. Is that correct?
Mr. Brown, I don't want to speak to your motion, but I was under the impression that you were moving to not recommend Article 12 as written for the 100,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And that was seconded by Selectwoman Roundtree Olive. Selectwoman Cowan, did you have any other questions, comment? I know your hand was up. Okay.
I know it was a leftover.
So we have a motion.
Article 12 just says design work for toward a new garage at the DPW.
So the motion and the second on the floor is to not recommend Article 12 as written. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And the clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Dean, are we permitted to ask if the board is inclined to move Article 12 at a different number?
Yeah, I mean, this is the time if you want to get creative with some other options. If you don't like what's worded here, you want to rephrase the article, maybe make it a different number. Certainly that's within your purview to do that. There are 5 pretty creative people here, I know, at least. There's more than that. I'm looking at 10 plus. So if you want to have at it, you're more than in the space to do that.
Okay. So I'll pause for a minute and ask if the board, if anyone on the board wants to make a motion to creatively restructure this.
Mr. Chair, does that mean that that we could change this and then recommend this and then not have this one that we voted down on the warrant as well? Or
that's correct. This is the opportunity for the board to either recommend, not recommend, or amend articles for the voters to consider at deliberative session.
Got it. Thank you.
And I will say, Mr. Chairman, I think with a 0-5 vote, my preference would be, and again, this is in your authority, not mine, but my preference would be to pull it from the warrant altogether if it was a 0-5 not in favor. It doesn't seem to make much sense for it to go forward anywhere.
No, I would agree with that. So I'm not hearing any appetite, I think, for, or maybe not. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yeah, I think to accomplish what you're asking about or what you're interested in, we would have to ask to reconsider the previous motion.
Okay.
And then somebody has to propose a change to it. That's just the technical issue.
Okay. I'm not seeing any hands up, so I think Mr. Dean will just pull Article 12.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on to Article 13, the Public Safety Complex Alternative Analysis, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of evaluating alternatives for a new public safety complex. This sum to come from general taxation. Estimated tax impact, 46 cents per thousand, $4.55 per 100,000 assessed property value. Majority vote will be required. There's no public. I'll open it up to the public procedurally. There's no public, so I'll close it. Mr. Dean, do we have either of the chiefs to speak to this tonight?
Chief Wilking is on the call. Chief Poulin is not, but Chief Wilking is. Chief Poulin's on vacation this week.
Okay. Chief Wilking, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll add in. I mean, I think it's been debated pretty well between Chairman Kelly and Chairman Weeks with Peter. But I just want to let the board realize one thing. We had a very productive meeting. We, meaning Chief Poulin and myself, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but the facilities committee did a fantastic job. They came to the fire police station, the complex. We reviewed the good, bad, and the ugly, and we had a very productive meeting afterwards. And Chairman Kelly's right. That's when the the CIP replacement of 400,000 was reduced to 200,000 because it was decided that a placeholder, if you will, was substantially higher than what would be necessary to hold, design, feasibility, and analysis of alternatives. And we welcome that discussion. Roll in the budget committee. And I had the most productive budget meeting with our subcommittee and budget committee that we've had in nearly the 15 years I've been the assistant chief working for Brian, and now my first year. And my hat's off to the budget committee. I took away from that meeting that Chairman Kelly was desperately trying to leverage the people we have in this town, the intelligence, the abilities to bring forth a project fully transparent to the voters, not in any way cut out public meetings, but reverse. Ask the facilities committee to sit on a building committee and add their expertise. But in every way, it was going to be a feasibility. We're going to look at different analyses and try to determine what would work best for the town. About that same time, we received the fire study, which made it abundantly clear to us, perhaps what we should have realized all along, that our call volume and demand is centered around, no surprise, the core of the community or the downtown area. So a comment was made at the budget committee, not in any way to pre-assume or select a site. The comment was simply that there was no way for us to vision a fire station outside the downtown core and still meet the substantial need of the community. And with that, Chief Poulin asked, how would we reorg, rebuild, design, or tear down and start fresh a new fire police station? So the offer was extended to perhaps that land that we had purchased years ago for, yes, a substation would be better suited to be a police station. So these are just, ideas vetted out and batted around the table at a budget committee meeting. In no way should be interpreted as our preferred analysis or our preferred alternative. They were just things that we felt were viable. And to the end, and I agree, I've listened to Peter and Chris, and I value their input. Yes, we too said that it would be a nice thought if we could look at the design of a small substation on the footprint of that land that perhaps the PD would use. So we welcome that page. Page Renee works well. We are in the final months of coming up with an RFP that can be ready to roll out if the public supports this warrant article, because time's of the essence. I can't see how a reputable company could come in and do what you're asking, a feasibility study and an alternative analysis, and have it ready, and a minimum, a draft of that for September, so we could really have a great spirited discussion this fall. So I think a lot of great work has been done by both the facilities committee outlining that RFP. I thank you so much. It's great work that we could take forward. But I also value the lessons we learned from Bob and the budget committee in discussing what we can bring to bear as town leaders and appropriate volunteer committees. I won't speak to the difference between 100 and 150,000. That's not within my purview, and I don't have that expertise. What more we're going to get for 150,000 over 100. I think you've heard a lot of great discussion from the board chairs on that already. And with that, I'll pause. But I thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from the board? Discussion? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Again, like the other, if this is an opportunity to revise or amend the number, recommend the number, or not recommend the number.
I move that we recommend.
Second.
What, recommending the article as written, Selectman Brown?
Yep, recommending as written.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously to recommend as written. Okay. Article 14, to appropriate to capital reserve fund for the parks improvements, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the parks improvement capital reserve fund previously established. This sum to come from general taxation, the estimated tax impact, 46 cents per thousand, $4.55 per $100,000 value. Majority vote is required. I'll open it up to the public, and there is no public, so we'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion, questions, or comments? And I can't see hands. Mr. Dean, can I have my screen back? Thanks. Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 14.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk. Julie, you're mute. There you go.
Yeah, no, sorry, I got all squirrely with what's on my screen. Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion's unanimous. The motion passes unanimously. To recommend Article 14. Article 15, appropriate to the sick leave trust fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the sick leave expendable trust fund previously established. The sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. The estimated tax impact is none. No amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Open it up to the public. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion? Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 15.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Article 16, Conservation Fund, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $50,000 to the Conservation Fund established pursuant to RSA 36A:5. These funds will be used for purposes consistent with the Conservation Fund, including the purchase of interest in real property to be held for conservation purposes. This sum to come from general taxation. The estimated tax impact is 23 cents per thousand, $2.28 per 100,000 assessed property value. Majority vote is required. Open it up to the public. There's no public. Close it. Bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 16.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Article 17 is the Snow and Ice Fund appropriation, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Snow and Ice Deficit Non-Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. The estimated tax impact is none. No amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Open it up to the public. There's no public. We'll close it to the public. Discussion from the board.
I think this is, Mr. Dean, can you tell me what we currently have in the fund?
I will ask the finance director to respond to that.
Reason I'm asking.
Yes, good evening. The current balance is $53,073 in the Snow and Ice Non-Capital Reserve Fund.
I have to say, I cannot remember a year that we haven't already had that spent by the time we have this budget conversation. So I would recommend that we approve this warrant article for the vote.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Article 18, the Stewart Park project deficit, to see if the town will vote to transfer the amount of $105,794 from the town's current non-spendable general fund balance to the capital projects fund balance to eliminate the Stewart Park seawall project deficit from 2005. This project has been completed. This article will not impact the unassigned fund balance. Majority vote required. We'll open it up to the public. It's now closed to the public. Seeing none, back to the board for discussion. Any discussion or questions?
Just a note, Mr. Chair, we'll add estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation.
Great, thank you. I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 18.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconds. Motions and seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The chair, clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Article 19, to appropriate to trust fund Swayze Parkway, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,300 to be added to the Swayze Parkway Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance. This amount is equivalent to the amount of permit fees collected during the past year for use of the Swayze Parkway. A majority vote required. And Mr. Dean, would you add the same language to that as well?
Yes, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation.
Thank you. We'll open it to the public, and there's no public, so closed. And back to the board for discussion. I would entertain them. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I didn't see the meeting where this was discussed, and I just would like to know what the purpose is.
Yeah, so this 2 years ago, the town established a trust fund with the trustees of trust funds to put money into that had all the permit fees from Swayze Parkway going into that fund.
Right.
And DRA told us basically that we have to have an article now every year to do that appropriation into the fund. So it's extremely clunky, unfortunate, but that's what they've told us. And instead of having them reject that article or not move the money, because that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
We put this article on. So we'll try to revisit it again and with them in 2021 just to kind of get further clarification on it. But for now, we're just being safe with this.
Okay, thank you.
Theoretically, we could leave the 1,300 and do this every 2 years or every 3 years, but it's, for now, we'll do it now and go from there, is my recommendation.
Is there a motion to recommend?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes all of the budget articles. I would entertain a motion to close the hearing on budget and warrant articles.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And the clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move into regular business. We need to scroll. Madam Clerk, I think we've got some abatements and credits and such.
Yeah, I'm scrolling.
Yeah. Here we go. Looks like page 105.
Oh. Okay, just the consideration of the board, we have this number of veterans credits, all in the amount of $500. Is the preferred method to do each one separately, or can we do them all as, do you feel comfortable doing them all as one group?
Unless there's any objection from board members on any of the map lots, then I would suggest doing it once.
Okay, no objection. Okay. I move to approve the veterans credits in the amount of $500 for the following locations. Map 74, lot 28, map 68, lot 6, unit 611, map 90, lot 18, unit 39, map 63, lot 79, map 19, lot 16, unit 27, and map 69, lot 3, unit 9.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Chair says aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the following tax abatement for map 70, lot 99, in the amount of $225.72, representing the year 2019.
Second.
Any further discussion? There's a motion and a second. Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the abatement for map 70, lot 99, in the amount of $237.55, which represents 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Now, Mr. Dean, you might want to help me out here. We're listing on here solar exemptions, but there's no dollar amount because we never specified when we put the warrant article on to approve a solar exemption. So it's on here because this is where they exist.
Right, that's correct. And I believe that the exemption being granted is 100% of whatever the solar panels are valued at.
Right, and they depreciate over time. The question is, much like the elderly exemptions, should we have an actual number that somebody would be exempted, like, $1,000, something like Unitil does for changing from oil to gas or electricity, and that would need a vote of the legislative body. But I'm just throwing it out there, maybe for the Energy Committee to consider. I think we talked about it once, but is the board interested in having another kind of exemption for an amount of money from the appropriations that we make, or the taxes we collect? Does that make sense?
So an amount beyond the value of the solar panels or what have you, that kind of thing, more of an incentive.
Right, exactly, an incentive. I know sometimes some towns do you get a 1-year exemption for half the price of installation, or a 1 year, it would only be 1 year, a 1-year extension for $500 or something like that as an incentive to add more solar arrays on people's homes.
Sounds like something the Energy Committee could take up.
I think we talked about it a couple years ago, but then we had LED lights and other fun stuff. So there's nothing to approve on this. It's just for your information.
And Selectwoman Gilman, that has come up at the once or twice with the Sustainability Advisory Committee too.
Okay, so we need to decide on something.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just so we avoid any kind of issue, perhaps, could I have the board vote to just grant these solar exemptions for these maps and lots, just in case assessing put them here for that reason? That you actually had to vote to grant them, even though they're not tied to a dollar amount?
Sure. Sure. I move to approve a solar exemption for the following map and lot numbers. Map 64, lot 22, unit 1. Map 62, lot 57. Map 11, lot 18, unit 16. Map 75, lot 25, and map 101, lot 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Ms. Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Dean? Town Manager's report?
No report this week, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Select Board Committee reports. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yeah, just real quick, the Heritage Commission met this morning, and we're just working our way through the Park Street Heritage neighborhood. We've planned a follow-up flyer, frequently asked questions for that neighborhood, and then we'll have a public meeting in late February, informational meeting, to see what the interest is.
Thank you. Selectman Brown?
At a communications committee meeting where the committee is splitting up into different groups to come up with basically plans for social media, television. So that's just sort of a splitting up for working committees or working groups, and that's it.
Great, thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Can you detail the police committee, because I know you were there for longer?
All right. Yeah, the police advisory committee moved through creating a survey. So basically treated it like a second pass at a working session to create a survey about people's perceptions about policing in the town.
Thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
I just wanted to give a brief update from the previous housing committee meeting. They're just following up on the small house workforce affordable housing and just surveying different towns to find out kind of what they're doing, where resources are coming from, what the needs are from small businesses. So that's kind of what's been under work. The Swayze Parkway Committee met on the 14th at 1 p.m. I unfortunately can't meet in person during those times because I'm home with my kids who are remote learners. So I'll just wait to get the minutes from that and then update you guys on our next meeting.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman, did you have a question?
I was going to ask about the Swayze Parkway trustees meeting in regards to the African American memorial situation. I know there had been some discussion about putting it something at Swayze Parkway, and we have a liaison from the Heritage Commission that's keeping up with that. And she didn't know where the Swayze Parkway trustees were on it. So
The last update that we had from the parking trustees, they were not fully in favor of having another monument within the park. So I know Renee Allen was in the waiting room earlier. So perhaps, I just know that nothing formal has been approved or done as of yet. But I know Renee is working very hard and meeting often with a few other committee members of different committees to get things going. So I don't know if Selectman Brown, you have anything else to add to that?
When I missed the last meeting.
Way to go.
Renee has actually communicated with me, just keeping me updated with her progress. She is not ready, consistent with what Selectwoman Rountree said. She's not ready to come before the board yet, but she knows that whenever, she's ready for an update, she's welcome to come before the board and let us know how that's progressing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Selectwoman Rountree. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yep. In addition to the Exeter Stakeholders Police Committee, I had the planning board and we took up the IOCA, where we approved their request for, I don't remember what it was. I think it was some parking exemption because there weren't going to be enough parking spaces. And it's an exciting project that is going forward. And we also took up and then delayed the grisette. There was an additional grisette exemption that he was asking for. And we asked for additional time on that.
Great, thank you. I have a River Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday. We don't have any correspondence. The board calendar, we do need to meet next Monday on the 25th. It will be a light agenda. Mr. Dean, refresh my memory, what we have on tap.
One of the things that we do have is an involuntary lot merger. And then I will be having the Public Works at some point will need to update the board on the siphons project as well, to give you some information about that and how things are going with it.
Okay, and then Selectwoman Rountree.
I just want to make sure, I think we have another candidate for the,
you're correct.
It's 10:15. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So,
maybe we can collaborate on this.
Thank you. So have our interview, I hope, next Monday as well. That should be the 7th candidate.
We were going to include any additional interviews next Monday.
That's the plan, yes.
Yes.
Of the candidates we have, yes.
Yep. And then, Mr. Dean, we may have one other person to give a quick presentation, but we can talk about that later this week. But we'll keep it, our meetings have been long and we've been consistently meeting each week. So we'll try to keep the agenda light while maintaining our business. And then Mr. Dean, in February, I don't have my calendar in front of me. What did we have on tap?
We had set up the 8th and 22nd.
Yeah.
So that was the plan.
All right. And then more to come on deliberative session.
Yes.
Okay. We don't have any non-public session. Again, thank you everybody tonight for all your hard work. Any other comments or discussion?
Just want to say that I'm proud of our board for making what's probably going to be a tough decision but I would rather the town of Exeter be spearheading this than following in other people's footsteps. So I think it's worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, at this time I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Rountree.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.